Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. What secrets lie beneath the surface of our everyday lives? It was a question I often pondered, especially as I stood on the threshold of the university's underground tunnels, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The night was dark and the campus, usually bustling with life, felt eerily quiet. A sense of unease crept over me as I prepared to descend into the depths of the unknown. I had always been drawn to mysteries, the kind that lurked just out of sight, waiting to be uncovered. My friends often teased me about my penchant for exploring the obscure, but tonight I was alone. The rest had decided that the tales of ancient rituals and hidden chambers were just that, tales. But I felt a pull, an insistent urge to seek out the truth behind the legends. As I took my first step down the worn stone stairs, a chill ran down my spine. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic. It clung to the back of my throat, making it hard to breathe. I paused, glancing back up at the faint glow of the campus lights, wondering if I should turn back. But the allure of discovery was stronger than my fear. The tunnel stretched before me, its walls rough and uneven, as if time itself had etched its story into the very stone. I pulled out my phone, the screen casting a weak light that flickered against the shadows. The beam revealed faint markings on the walls, symbols that looked both ancient and unsettling. My pulse quickened as I traced my fingers over one of them. It felt alive, pulsing with an energy I couldn't quite understand. With each step deeper into the tunnel, I became more aware of the sounds around me. The faint drip of water echoed in the distance, a reminder that I was far from the surface. I could almost hear whispers, too soft to discern, but palpable enough to send a shiver down my spine. I shook my head, trying to dispel the feeling that I was not alone. Then I noticed it, a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. I spun around, heart racing. There was nothing there, just the darkness and the stone walls closing in on me. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment. "It's just your imagination," I whispered to myself, but even I could hear the tremor in my voice. As I pressed on, the tunnel twisted and turned, its layout becoming increasingly disorienting. I could feel my anxiety growing, a knot tightening in my stomach. The atmosphere shifted, the air felt charged, as if something unseen was watching, waiting. I could almost hear the faintest echo of laughter, distant and mocking, drifting through the darkness. "Get a grip," I muttered, forcing my legs to move forward. But every shadow seemed to stretch and pulse, and I could feel the weight of eyes upon me. My mind raced with thoughts of what could be lurking just beyond the reach of my phone's light. The legends spoke of a cult that had once thrived in these tunnels, their rituals dark and unholy. What if they had never truly left? Suddenly a loud thud reverberated through the tunnel, causing me to jump. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound had come from deeper within the darkness, a reminder that this place was alive in ways I couldn't comprehend. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity pushed me forward. As I ventured deeper, I stumbled upon an opening. The air shifted again, this time carrying a faint scent of decay. I stepped inside, the beam of my phone illuminating a room filled with remnants of the past. Old candles, tattered cloth, and strange symbols etched into the stone floor. My breath hitched as I realized I had discovered something significant. Then I saw it, a circle drawn with what looked like dried blood. My stomach twisted at the sight, and I felt the walls closing in around me. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling in a chaotic symphony of voices that seemed to beckon me closer. I was frozen, caught between the urge to flee and the pull of discovery. Just then I heard a soft rustling behind me. My heart dropped as I turned, the light from my phone illuminating nothing but shadows. But the feeling of being watched intensified. A chill ran through me, and I knew I had to leave. I stumbled backward, ready to bolt. But then I caught sight of something, a figure just at the edge of the light. It stood still, cloaked in darkness, its shape shifting and swirling as if it were part of the shadows themselves. I felt my breath hitch in my throat, terror gripping me. I couldn't make out its features, but something in the air felt different, heavy, foreboding. I turned and ran, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the stone walls as I fled the scene. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of sound that threatened to swallow me whole. I could feel the presence behind me, its breath brushing against my neck, urging me to move faster. As I reached the stairs, my heart raced, pounding in my chest like a war drum. I didn't dare look back. The air was thick with dread, and I could sense that whatever lurked in the shadows wanted to keep me there, to pull me into the darkness. With one last burst of energy, I burst out of the tunnel, gasping for breath. The night air felt like a lifeline, and I stumbled back onto the campus, the lights of the university flickering in the distance. I turned to look at the entrance of the tunnel, my heart still racing. Was it just my imagination? Or had I truly encountered something ancient and sinister lurking beneath the surface? The answers seemed elusive, hidden beneath layers of shadows and whispers. But one thing was certain, I would never look at the university the same way again. The cool night air filled my lungs, but it did little to calm the storm raging within me. I stumbled across the campus, the distant glow of the lights casting long shadows that danced ominously at my feet. My heart was still pounding, a drum of fear and adrenaline echoing in my ears. I could hardly believe what I had just experienced. Had I really encountered something in those tunnels, or was it all a figment of my overactive imagination? I leaned against a lamppost, its warm light flickering above me, trying to collect my thoughts. The remnants of the tunnel lingered in my mind, the whispers, the blood circle, the shadow that seemed to reach for me. I could still feel the oppressive weight of dread pressing down on my shoulders, reminding me of the darkness that lay just beneath the surface. As I caught my breath, my phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to reality. It was a message from Alex, one of my friends. "Where are you? We're starting a movie night. Come join." The invitation was tempting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to tell someone about what I had found. I replied with a vague excuse, opting to stay behind and process my experience. With each passing moment, I felt the urge to return to the tunnels. The unease in my gut wrestled with the thrill of discovery. What if there was something more? What if the stories of ancient rituals were true? As I paced along the campus, I decided I couldn't just let it go. I needed answers. Determined, I made my way back to the entrance of the tunnels, my heart racing as I descended the stairs once more. This time I came prepared. I had brought a flashlight, its beam stronger than my phone's weak glow. The moment I stepped back into the tunnel, the air shifted again, thicker, laden with memories of the past. It felt as if the walls themselves were breathing, welcoming me back into their depths. As I ventured deeper, the faint sound of water dripped from somewhere far off, punctuating the silence with a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. I turned my flashlight on the walls, searching for any clues that might explain the mysteries hidden here. The strange symbols I had seen before began to take on new meaning in the bright light, hieroglyphs etched into the stone, telling stories of a time long forgotten. Suddenly a low rumble echoed through the tunnel, vibrating beneath my feet. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through me. Was it just the sound of water settling, or something more sinister? I pressed on, my resolve hardening as I approached the room where I had discovered the blood circle. As I stepped inside, I was struck by the eerie stillness that enveloped me. The room felt different this time, heavier, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I shone my flashlight around, the beam illuminating the remnants of old candles and scattered cloth. But there was something new, additional symbols drawn on the floor, more elaborate and intricate, almost as if they had been added since my last visit. I crouched down to examine them more closely. The designs seemed to swirl, forming shapes that suggested movement. My heart raced as I realized they might represent figures in a ritual, perhaps even the very cult that once thrived in these tunnels. What had they summoned here? I could feel a chill crawl up my spine, a whisper in the back of my mind warning me to turn back. Yet I couldn't help myself. I reached out, fingers grazing the rough stone, feeling the history seep into my skin. The weight of countless past lives pressed against me. But then, from the corner of my eye, I caught a flicker of movement. I turned my head quickly, but again there was nothing, only shadows shifting and swirling, teasing the edges of my vision. My breath quickened and I stood up straight, heart pounding. "Get it together," I muttered to myself, but my voice echoed strangely in the room, blending with the whispering echoes that seemed to respond. Was it paranoia, or had I truly heard voices, faint and far away, calling out to me? Suddenly, the room felt constricting. I could almost taste the fear on my tongue as I stepped back, my pulse racing. That's when I noticed it, the air shifted, becoming charged with a malevolent energy. A darkness stirred in the far corner, coalescing into a shape. My flashlight flickered, and for a brief moment I saw it, an outline of something unnatural, long and twisted, standing just beyond the reach of the light. I froze, rooted to the spot. The figure loomed, indistinct and ominous, as if it were made from the shadows themselves. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed by a mix of terror and curiosity. I had come seeking the truth, but now I was confronted with something beyond my understanding. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, urging me to approach. They sounded familiar, echoing the laughter I had heard earlier, now a haunting melody of voices weaving a tale of despair. I took a step back, but the shadows seemed to follow, reaching out as if to snatch me into their depths. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I turned and fled, the sound of my footsteps reverberating through the tunnel like a wild heartbeat. I could feel the presence behind me, the darkness clawing at my back, urging me to look back, to face it. But I refused, focusing instead on the faint light of the exit that beckoned me like a lifeline. As I burst into the night air, gasping for breath, I knew I could never unsee what I had witnessed. The echoes of the tunnel followed me, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of everyday life. I could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down on me, and I realized I had only scratched the surface of a much larger mystery. I stood there trembling, uncertain of what I had uncovered. The university felt different now, the shadows longer, the whispers louder. I knew I had to return. There were answers waiting for me, buried deep within the darkness. But at what cost? The chill of the night air wrapped around me like a damp cloak as I stood outside the entrance to the tunnels, trying to catch my breath. My heart was still racing, a frantic drum echoing in my ears. I felt a strange mix of fear and determination coursing through me, pushing me to delve deeper into the mystery that lay beneath the university. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was destined to uncover something monumental, something that had been hidden for far too long. As I walked back toward the campus, I couldn't help but replay the events in my mind. The figure, the whispers, the ominous symbols, all swirling together in a nightmarish collage. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, as if that simple act could ward off the dread lingering in the shadows of my thoughts. My phone buzzed again, snapping me from my reverie. It was another message from Alex, this time more urgent. Where are you? Where really were? You've been gone too long. A pang of guilt washed over me. I had ditched my friends for this, whatever this was, and now I felt their concern gnawing at me. But I needed more time to process. I needed to find answers before I could face them. I paused for a moment, staring at the darkened entrance of the tunnels once more. It beckoned to me like a siren luring a sailor to his doom. I decided to regroup at my dorm. I could gather my thoughts, maybe even find some research material on the university's history. The stories I'd heard from students over the years began to resurface. Tales of strange rituals, of missing students, and of a secret society that once thrived within these walls. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like those stories were not just legends, but warnings. Back in my room, I flipped through old books and online archives, desperately seeking any scrap of information I could find. The more I read, the more unsettling the truth became. The university had a rich history. Founded in the early 1800s, it had served as a gathering place for intellectuals and secretive organizations alike. The deeper I dug, the more I found references to the Circle, a group believed to have conducted dark rituals in the tunnels beneath the campus. I stumbled upon a faded journal entry from a student who had vanished without a trace years ago. The entry was frantic, detailing encounters with shadowy figures and whispers that seemed to echo through the tunnels. My hands trembled as I read the chilling words, the haunting familiarity of the experience resonating deep within me. "They're calling to me," it read. "I can hear them. I must go back." That was the final straw. I slammed the book shut, my heart racing anew. I felt a compulsion to return to the tunnels, to confront whatever had been awakened within those darkened corridors. The fear of the unknown no longer paralyzed me. It fueled a fire of curiosity that I couldn't ignore. But this time I wouldn't go alone. I texted a few friends, hoping to rally them to my cause. Hey, I found something crazy in the tunnels. You have to see this. Meet me outside the entrance in an hour. I hit send and paced around my room, anxiety coursing through me as I prepared for what was to come. When I arrived at the entrance again, my heart sank. The shadows stretched long under the pale moonlight, and a sense of foreboding filled the air. But soon I was joined by two friends, Marcus and Lila, both curious and skeptical. Marcus was always up for an adventure, and Layla had a knack for practicality, which would serve us well. "What's going on?" Leela asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You said it was urgent." I glanced at the entrance, a shiver running down my spine. "You'll see. Just trust me." I led them down the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the rough stone walls that seemed to close in around us. As we ventured deeper, I recounted my experience, the whispers, the symbols, the shadowy figure. They listened intently, Lila occasionally shooting skeptical glances at Marcus, who was visibly intrigued. "Sounds like a classic ghost story," he said with a grin, but the tension in his voice suggested he wasn't as unfazed as he pretended to be. We reached the room where I had seen the blood circle. The atmosphere shifted palpably, the air thickening with an invisible weight. I switched on my flashlight, revealing the symbols etched into the stone. They glimmered faintly in the beam, as if pulsating with a life of their own. "Whoa," Marcus exclaimed, stepping closer. "This is wild. Do you think it's real?" Before I could respond, Layla's expression changed. "Guys, do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. We paused, straining to listen. There it was, the faintest murmur of voices echoing through the tunnel, a soft chorus that seemed to rise and fall like a distant melody. "That's creepy," Marcus said, unease creeping into his voice. "Let's get out of here." But I couldn't turn back now. "No, wait. I need to know what it is," I insisted, stepping forward. The whispers intensified, swirling around us, urging us to approach the symbols on the ground. Leela hesitated, her eyes darting around the room. "I don't think this is a good idea. We should leave." Ignoring her, I knelt down, tracing the shapes with my fingers. Suddenly the temperature dropped, and a cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight. Darkness engulfed us, the whispers rising to a fever pitch. Panic surged as I fumbled for my phone, using its weak light to illuminate the space. That's when I saw it again, the outline of the figure, clearer now, emerging from the shadows. It was tall, elongated, with indistinct features that seemed to shift and flicker in the dim light. I felt my breath hitch in my throat, fear clamping down like a vice. "Run!" Leela shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. Without thinking, I bolted toward the exit, dragging Marcus and Layla behind me. The whispers escalated into a cacophony, a haunting symphony of despair as the figure lurked in the shadows, its presence palpable. We stumbled through the tunnels, my heart racing as I glanced back. The figure seemed to follow, moving with an unnatural grace, almost as if it was feeding off our terror. The walls pulsed, the symbols glowing ominously as we neared the exit. Bursting into the open air, we collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. The night felt different, charged with an energy that hinted at something lurking just beyond our understanding. The whispers faded, but the fear remained, a heavy fog settling in our chests. "What the hell was that?" Marcus panted, looking pale. Leela clutched her arms tightly, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't know," I admitted, shaken to my core. "But I think we've awakened something we shouldn't have." As we sat there, the gravity of our discovery settled in. We had ventured too far, crossed a line that now threatened to pull us back into the darkness. I could feel it, the shadows were watching, waiting for the next opportunity to ensnare us in their grasp. With my heart racing and uncertainty gnawing at my insides, I realized that the journey was far from over. We had stumbled onto something dangerous, something that demanded answers. And as the shadows danced around us, I knew we would have to return before it was too late. The chilling silence enveloped us as we caught our breath outside the tunnel entrance. The air felt heavy with unspoken fears, and I could sense a lingering presence just beyond the edge of my vision. My mind raced with thoughts of what lay within those dark corridors. The figure, the whispers, it all felt too real, too ominous to dismiss as mere figments of our imagination. "Do you think we should go back?" Marcus asked, breaking the heavy silence. His face was pale, and I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Leela shivered beside him, her arms wrapped tightly around her torso. "I don't know," I replied, glancing back at the tunnel. "We barely scratched the surface of whatever is going on down there. What if we're the only ones who can figure this out?" Lila shook her head. "This is too dangerous. We don't know what we're dealing with. What if that thing comes after us again?" I felt a pang of guilt for dragging them into this. But deep down, a part of me knew we couldn't turn back now. "Look," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt, "if we can find out more about that figure, maybe we can understand what it wants. We can't let fear control us." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine, but if we go back, we stick together. No wandering off." With a shared apprehensive glance, we agreed to return. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light that flickered as we descended the stairs once more. The cold air seeped into our bones, but this time, determination fueled our steps. The tunnel felt more foreboding than before, the darkness pressing in around us. I could still hear the echoes of the whispers reverberating in my mind, a haunting melody that urged us forward. My flashlight flickered and I cursed under my breath, hoping it wouldn't fail us now. As we moved deeper into the tunnels, the symbols on the walls seemed to shift, revealing new shapes that twisted in the shadows. I raised my light, illuminating a series of markings that appeared almost like a grotesque mural. They depicted figures cloaked in dark robes, standing around a fire, their faces obscured. I shivered at the sight, feeling a cold breeze dance along my skin, as if the very air around us was alive with secrets. "Do you think this is part of the circle?" Marcus whispered, leaning closer to examine the markings. "They look like they're performing some kind of ritual." "Possibly," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "If these tunnels were used for dark practices, they might have left traces of their activities." Leela shivered, her eyes darting nervously. "We should be careful. What if they're still down here, or what if they're watching us?" I finished for her, glancing around the darkened corridors. The weight of our surroundings pressed heavily on me, each breath a reminder of the unknown lurking just out of sight. Suddenly the air shifted again, and the whispers began to rise in intensity, echoing through the narrow passageways. I could almost make out words, hastily spoken incantations, pleading cries that sent chills down my spine. My heart raced as I turned off my flashlight, plunging us into darkness. "What are you doing?" Layla hissed, her voice trembling. "Listen," I said, straining to hear over the growing cacophony. The whispers swirled around us, an intoxicating blend of dread and allure. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsating with an energy that beckoned us deeper. In the suffocating silence that followed, I felt a presence coalesce around us. I turned to my friends, my voice barely a whisper. "We're not alone." The air thickened, and I could sense something looming just beyond the reach of my senses. My breath caught in my throat as I turned slowly, scanning the shadows. That's when I saw it, the figure again, standing further down the tunnel, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through my veins. We took off, our footsteps echoing like thunder against the stone walls. I could hear the figure's movements behind us, fluid and unnatural, as if it were gliding rather than running. Panic propelled us forward, our breaths coming in frantic gasps. The whispers escalated, now sounding like mocking laughter, taunting us as we fled. I could feel the cold breath of the entity on my neck, sending a wave of icy terror crashing over me. As we rounded a corner, I nearly collided with a wall. I stumbled trying to regain my balance, and Leela's hand clutched my arm. "This way," she cried, pulling me toward an open doorway. We dashed into the small room, its walls covered with more symbols, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. I slammed the door shut behind us, my heart pounding like a war drum. We huddled in the corner, listening intently, the whispers now muffled but still haunting. "What the hell is going on?" Marcus gasped, his eyes wide with fear. "Well, that thing, it's real. It's not just a ghost story anymore," Leela said, trembling. "What if it's guarding something? What if it doesn't want us here?" I looked around the dim room, trying to catch my breath. "We need to find out what it is," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. "There must be a reason it's here." "What purpose?" Just then my flashlight flickered back to life, illuminating the walls around us. I gasped as I noticed something etched into the stone, a large circle, surrounded by intricate symbols that mirrored those we had seen earlier. In the center was a figure, arms outstretched, as if beckoning us closer. "Look at this," I whispered, kneeling down to get a closer look. "This must be part of whatever ritual they performed." Leela leaned over my shoulder, her eyes widening. "Do you think it's a summoning circle? Like they were trying to call something up from below?" I nodded slowly, the pieces of the puzzle starting to click into place. Maybe that's why the whispers are so strong. Whatever they summoned, it's still here. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from outside the room, sending jolts of fear through us. The door rattled violently, and I could hear the figure's movements, quick and deliberate. It was coming for us. "Hide," I shouted as we scrambled to find cover. We ducked behind the symbols, our breaths held tight in our chests, praying that the shadows would conceal us. The door swung open, the cold air pouring in like a dark wave. My heart pounded in my ears as the figure stepped into the room, its form even more grotesque up close. It loomed over the circle, its elongated limbs stretching out as if to caress the markings on the floor. I could feel the energy pulsing, the air thick with anticipation. The whispers crescendoed into a roar, drowning out everything else. It was as if the very essence of fear was materializing, feeding the entity's presence. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing for the chaos to cease, for the figure to disappear into the shadows from which it came. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure turned, as if sensing our presence. Its gaze locked onto mine, deep, empty voids that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt a pull, an unyielding urge to step forward, to reach out and touch the darkness. "Don't look at it," Leela whispered fiercely, her grip on my arm tightening. "It's trying to lure you in." With a jolt, I snapped back to reality, the primal instinct to flee flooding my senses. As the figure began to move toward us, I felt a surge of adrenaline, and I bolted to the opposite side of the room, pulling Marcus and Layla with me. We scrambled for the door, hearts pounding, as the whispers turned into agonized screams. The entity lunged, its shadow stretching impossibly long, reaching for us as we broke free from the room and raced down the tunnel. The darkness pressed in around us, the shadows closing ranks, but we pressed on. I could feel the weight of the entity behind us, the whispers screaming for our attention, pleading for us to stop. But we couldn't afford to look back. The only thought in my mind was escape. "Keep going. Don't stop," I shouted, urgency driving us forward. The entrance loomed ahead, a beacon of light in the abyss. Just a few more steps, I thought desperately. As we burst into the open air, the chill of the night hit us like a wave. We fell to the ground, gasping for breath, the overwhelming fear slowly beginning to ebb. But even as we regained our composure, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, lurking just out of sight. "Did you see that?" Marcus gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell was that?" "I don't know," I admitted, shaking uncontrollably. "But we have to find out before it's too late." As we sat there staring into the darkness of the tunnel, I realized that we had crossed a line. The answers we sought were deeper than we could have ever imagined, and the path ahead was fraught with danger. We would have to descend into the depths again, confront the shadows, and uncover the truth, whatever it might be. And so, with resolve settling in my chest, I knew our journey was far from over. The night air was cold and sharp as we stumbled away from the tunnel's mouth, our breaths visible in the moonlight like ghostly apparitions escaping our lips. I could still feel the heaviness of the darkness lingering at my back, pressing against me like an unwanted embrace. The whispers had faded into silence, but their echoes danced in my mind, stirring up a tempest of fear and dread. Did we really see that?" Leela's voice trembled, breaking the stillness that surrounded us. Her eyes were wide, glistening with a mix of terror and disbelief. "I don't know," I replied, shaking my head as I struggled to find the words. "But we can't just ignore it. We need to figure out what we're dealing with." Marcus leaned against a nearby tree, his face pale and drawn. "What if it comes back? What if it wants us?" He sounded defeated, as if the very idea of facing that entity again had drained him of all hope. "It already knows we're here," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Whatever it is, it's aware of us now. We can't let it intimidate us. We have to take control of this situation." Leela nodded slowly, though uncertainty still flickered in her eyes. But how? We barely made it out alive. What if we go back and it's waiting for us? I stepped closer, lowering my voice. If we don't confront it, we might never find the answers. We have to understand what we saw and why it's connected to the rituals down there. There's something deeper at play. After a heavy pause, Marcus pushed himself off the tree, determination setting into his features. Okay, but this time we go in prepared. We need a plan. I felt a surge of relief wash over me at his words. Agreed. We need flashlights, rope, and maybe something to defend ourselves, just in case. As we made our way back to the campus, the moonlight illuminating our path, I felt the weight of the upcoming confrontation looming over us. The idea of delving back into the tunnels filled me with both excitement and dread. There was an undercurrent of fear, but there was also a thrill, an intoxicating rush of adrenaline that pulled me forward. When we reached our dorm, we gathered supplies, our movements brisk and purposeful. Each item felt like a small barrier against the darkness we were about to face. Flashlights clicked on, casting bright beams that cut through the shadows. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of anxiety and anticipation surging through me. Let's do this, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The others nodded and we set out again, the tunnel looming ahead like a gaping maw, ready to swallow us whole. This time the air was still. The tunnel felt different, less like an eerie abyss and more like an ancient threshold, a gateway to something beyond our comprehension. As we descended the stairs once more, the shadows seemed to shift and dance, alive with whispers that curled around us like tendrils of smoke. Remember, I said quietly, stay close. We can't afford to get separated again. As we stepped into the main corridor, the atmosphere thickened. I could almost taste the tension, a metallic tang that coated my tongue. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulsate in the flashlight's beam, their meanings dancing just out of reach. I focused on one, a spiral that twisted into itself, creating an unsettling feeling of vertigo. Look at this, Marcus said, pointing to a corner of the room. There are more markings here. I approached, shining my light on the wall. The new symbols depicted twisted forms and grotesque faces, their eyes hollow and menacing. They seemed to watch us, filled with a malevolent energy that sent chills down my spine. This can't be good, Leela murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Whatever they were doing down here, it wasn't harmless, I agreed, stepping back from the wall. We need to find that circle again. Maybe it holds the key to understanding what we're dealing with. We moved deeper into the tunnels, following the dim light and the subtle shifts in the air. The whispers had returned, growing louder as we advanced, intertwining with our thoughts, blurring the lines between reality and the unknown. I felt the urge to turn back rising within me, but I forced it down. Curiosity pushed me forward. The need to unravel this mystery was overpowering. Here, I exclaimed as we finally spotted the doorway leading to the room we had fled earlier. The circle was still there, etched deeply into the ground, its symbols glowing faintly in the darkness. I knelt down, examining the intricate designs. There has to be something in these markings, I said, tracing a finger along the lines. They might tell us what the rituals were about. Layla leaned closer, peering at the circle with an intensity that mirrored my own. What if they were trying to summon something? Something that got out of control. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I said, glancing over my shoulder as the air grew heavy. But if we can find a way to reverse whatever they did, maybe we can stop it. As I contemplated the symbols, I noticed a subtle shift in the air, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. I turned, half expecting to see the figure again, but instead the room felt filled with an ominous energy, as if it were alive and breathing. "Do you feel that?" Marcus whispered, his voice laced with fear. Before I could respond, the whispers rose to a deafening crescendo, swirling around us like a tempest. The symbols on the ground began to glow brighter, pulsing with an unholy light. I could feel the air crackling with energy, electrifying my skin and sending shockwaves of panic coursing through my veins. "Get back!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet as the glow intensified. Suddenly the ground shook violently, and the whispers morphed into anguished screams. I felt a force pulling at my core, dragging me toward the circle. The markings writhed and twisted, becoming more chaotic as if responding to some unseen power awakening beneath us. "Run!" "Now!" Leela screamed, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. We stumbled backward just as the entity surged forth, a mass of darkness spilling from the circle like a spilled ink blot. The figure materialized, its shape shifting and contorting into a terrifying semblance of humanity. Its eyes were voids, a bottomless pit that threatened to swallow us whole. I felt a primal fear rise within me, clawing at my throat. There was no reasoning with it, no escaping its grasp. The air turned icy as it reached out, and I could hear the voices of the long-lost souls trapped within its form, crying for release. "Don't let it touch you," I shouted, feeling Layla's grip tighten on my arm as we darted toward the exit. As we sprinted down the corridor, I glanced back, seeing the entity advance with unsettling speed. The shadows twisted and writhed around it, echoing the very essence of our fears. The whispers transformed into a cacophony of screams, urging us to flee, to escape the horror that chased us. Bursting through the tunnel's entrance, we tumbled into the open air, gasping for breath. The night sky stretched above us, a canvas of stars twinkling coldly. But as we looked back, the figure loomed at the mouth of the tunnel, its silhouette dark against the moonlight. We had awoken something ancient and powerful, something that would not rest until it had claimed what it sought. As we stood there, hearts racing and minds racing even faster, I realized our battle was only just beginning. Whatever had been unleashed would stop at nothing to keep its secrets buried deep in the shadows. "Let's get help," Marcus panted, his face pale but resolute. "We can't do this alone." I nodded, fear twisting in my gut. We would need allies, knowledge, and strength to confront the darkness that lay below. And as we ran toward the safety of the campus, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were still watching, that we had not escaped them after all. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. What if you stumbled upon a place that felt alive, whispering secrets only you could hear? A place that drew you in with a haunting melody, beckoning you to uncover its mysteries. I stood on the shore of a serene lake in Washington state, the stillness broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the rocks. The island at its center seemed to shimmer under the fading sunlight, an alluring oasis amidst the tranquil surroundings. Tourists had shared strange stories about this island, tales of voices drifting across the water, voices that seemed to come from nowhere, yet felt like they belonged to something unseen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a mix of curiosity and trepidation. I was drawn to that island, compelled by an urge I couldn't quite explain. My friends had chosen to stay behind, preferring the safety of the familiar, but I had to go. There was something waiting for me, something I needed to find. With each stroke of the paddle, the water became darker, the lake swallowing the last remnants of daylight. A shiver ran down my spine as the voices began to surface. They were faint at first, like whispers carried by the wind. I strained to listen, but the words were indistinct, weaving in and out like a forgotten melody. My heart raced, a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursing through me. The closer I got to the island, the clearer the voices became. They echoed around me, surrounding me in a symphony of sound that felt both inviting and sinister. My pulse quickened. I could make out snippets of laughter, murmurs, and urgent conversations, yet there was no one in sight. As I pulled my kayak onto the sandy shore, an unsettling feeling washed over me. The island was supposed to be empty, yet I felt an unshakable sense of being watched. I glanced around, half expecting to see a group of campers or hikers, but there was only the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches swaying like skeletal fingers against the dusky sky. I stepped onto the island, the cool sand beneath my feet grounding me, but the voices only grew louder, swirling in my mind. I hesitated, a cold breeze wrapping around me, carrying with it a faint, unsettling scent, something rotten like decay. Shaking off the unease, I ventured further inland. The whispers coalesced into a low hum, filling the air with an unsettling rhythm. I couldn't tell if the voices were luring me deeper or warning me to turn back. Each step felt heavy, as though the earth itself was reluctant to let me pass. Suddenly a snap of a twig echoed behind me. I whirled around, heart pounding. Nothing, just shadows dancing under the canopy. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. My imagination was running wild. After all, it was just a deserted island. But then, from the depths of the trees, a voice broke through the cacophony, a low, melodic call that sent chills down my spine. "Help us," it was clear, plighting. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. Who was it? I stepped toward the sound, each footfall echoing in my ears. The atmosphere shifted, the air thickening with an unseen weight. The whispers morphed into a chaotic blend of laughter and cries, intertwining in a way that made my skin crawl. I could feel the shadows pressing in, dark shapes flitting just beyond the edge of my vision. I paused, doubt creeping in. This wasn't just an island, it was a trap. A place that ensnared the unwary with its siren song, drawing them in with promises of discovery while hiding its true nature. The realization sent a wave of panic coursing through me. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself, trying to steady my racing heart. Yet the voices persisted, beckoning me to explore further, to uncover the truth behind their sorrow. I forced myself to take another step. As I moved deeper into the island, the light began to fade, and the shadows grew bolder, creeping closer. I felt a presence lingering at the edges, something that wanted me to stay, to listen, to succumb to its call. With every rustle of leaves and every whispering wind, I could feel the weight of isolation settling in. The familiar feeling of safety I had carried with me began to slip away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. The island was alive and I was its prey. I stumbled upon a clearing, moonlight breaking through the canopy to illuminate a stone altar at its center. The voices crescendoed, echoing in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. My breath caught in my throat. The altar was covered in symbols, ancient and eerie, worn by time but still potent. Before I could process what I was seeing, the whispers intensified, filling the air with an electric charge. "Join us," they chanted, weaving in and out, a chorus of the lost. Fear gripped me as I realized the island wasn't just empty. It was haunted by the souls of those who had come before me, trapped in a cycle of torment. The voices no longer felt welcoming, they were a warning. I had to leave, to escape the island before it claimed me as its own. I turned to run, the shadows closing in behind me, the whispers turning into desperate screams. I raced toward the shore, adrenaline surging as the darkness swirled around me. The voices were no longer enticing. They were angry, pleading, demanding that I stay. The water glistened under the moonlight, but it felt like a barrier between life and something much darker. I reached my kayak, panic clawing at my throat. I had to get away, but the voices echoed louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Stay with us." I pushed the kayak into the water, my heart pounding in my chest. As I jumped in and began to paddle, I glanced back at the island. The shadows seemed to twist and turn, taking on forms that were all too familiar. The voices faded into a haunting wail, lingering in the air like a curse. I didn't stop until I reached the shore, collapsing onto the ground, gasping for breath. I had escaped physically, but the island had left its mark on my mind. The voices would follow me, a reminder of the isolation I had felt and the terror that lurked just beneath the surface. And even as I lay there, shaking off the remnants of fear, I knew one truth. The island would always be there, waiting for the next curious soul to step into its grasp. The sun had long set, and darkness enveloped the lake like a heavy shroud. I could still hear the echoes of the island's voices ringing in my ears, an unsettling reminder of what I had just escaped. The sounds haunted me, each whisper a chilling reminder of the unseen presence that lingered in the shadows. As I lay on the damp grass, my heart racing, I fought against the urge to look back at the island. I could feel the cold night air wrapping around me, and with every breath, I inhaled the lingering scent of the lake, fresh, yet tainted by the decay I had sensed earlier. I needed to clear my mind, to convince myself that the horrors I had just experienced were nothing but figments of my imagination. But as I stared at the dark water, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon, my thoughts began to spiral. I replayed every moment spent on that cursed island, the voices, the shadows, the chilling symbols etched into the altar. Each detail clawed at my sanity, threatening to unravel the very fabric of my reality. What if the island was more than just an echo of the past? What if it held a secret that transcended time? Determined to find answers, I pushed myself to my feet. I would return to the island at dawn. I needed to understand what I had encountered, to confront the darkness that had whispered my name. It was a reckless decision, but the allure of uncovering the truth was too strong to resist. As I made my way back to the cabin where I was staying, the path felt longer than before. The trees seemed to loom larger, their branches clawing at the sky like desperate hands. I could have sworn I heard laughter in the distance, echoing through the woods, a cruel mimicry of the joy I had once felt in this place. Once inside, I attempted to distract myself with mundane tasks. I prepared a cup of coffee, the warmth of the mug grounding me momentarily. But the taste was bitter, much like the unease settling in my stomach. My mind raced with possibilities. What could have happened on that island? Who had once walked there, and what had drawn them to its depths? I decided to research the area, digging through old records and books I found in the cabin. The university nearby had a history of mystery, whispers of ancient rituals and unsolved disappearances. As I flipped through the pages, a particular passage caught my attention. Legends spoke of a cult that had once thrived in the region, performing dark ceremonies to appease unseen forces. Could these voices be remnants of their rituals? With each revelation, the voices grew louder in my mind, urging me to return. They were no longer just echoes, they were a plea for understanding, a cry for recognition. I felt an overwhelming connection to the island, as if it was calling out to me. I had to know more. The first light of dawn broke through the trees, casting a golden hue over the landscape. My heart pounded as I gathered my things and made my way back to the water's edge. The kayak awaited me, a vessel of uncertainty and fear. As I pushed off from the shore, the chill of the morning air prickled my skin, but I was determined. The lake was eerily calm, the surface reflecting the pale sky above. As I paddled toward the island, the voices began to murmur again, softer this time, almost coaxing. They wrapped around me like a warm blanket, comforting yet foreboding. I closed my eyes for a moment, allowing the sounds to envelop me, drawing me closer to the heart of the mystery. When I reached the shore, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The trees stood tall and imposing, their branches swaying gently in the wind, as if whispering secrets of their own. I stepped onto the sandy beach, the soft grains slipping between my toes, grounding me in the present. The altar awaited me, a silent guardian of the past, and I felt an undeniable pull toward it. As I approached, I noticed the symbols etched into the stone more clearly. They seemed to pulse with an energy of their own, shimmering faintly in the soft light. I traced my fingers over the rough surface, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon me. Suddenly a rustling sound broke the stillness, and I turned quickly, heart racing. There was movement among the trees, a shadow darting just out of sight. Panic gripped me. Was I alone, or was something else lurking in the darkness? The voices surged again, this time a cacophony of pleas and warnings, drowning out my thoughts. "Leave, help us," they cried in unison, an overwhelming chorus of despair. I felt the air grow thick, suffocating, as if the island itself were trying to envelop me in its embrace. With every ounce of willpower, I forced myself to stay focused. I had come here for answers, not to succumb to fear. I needed to understand what had happened here, to confront whatever entity had woven itself into the fabric of this place. As I stepped back toward the altar, the shadows around me deepened, and I could feel the weight of eyes upon me. I scanned the trees, searching for signs of movement. That's when I noticed it, a flicker of movement just beyond the altar, a dark shape that seemed to blend seamlessly into the shadows. I took a step closer, my breath quickening as I strained to see what it was. The whispers grew frantic, swirling around me like a tempest. "Stay, join us," they implored, weaving a spell of confusion and fear. Suddenly the figure emerged, a fleeting silhouette that danced just beyond my reach. I stumbled back, panic flooding my veins. The entity seemed to shift and shimmer, an amalgamation of shadows that defied definition. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" The shadows twisted in response, the whispers crescendoing into a deafening roar. I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, a pulse echoing through the earth. "Help us remember," the voices intertwined, a haunting melody that sent chills down my spine. I was overwhelmed by a wave of emotion, fear, anger, and an inexplicable sadness. I realized then that the island was not just a place of darkness. It was a repository of memories, a sanctuary for lost souls. And I was standing at the precipice of something far greater than I had anticipated. As I reached out toward the shadowy figure, I felt a connection, a tether binding us together across the veil of existence. In that moment, I understood that I wasn't merely a visitor. I was part of a story that had been unfolding long before I set foot on the island. But with that realization came the urgency of escape. I had to leave before the island consumed me, before the darkness pulled me into its depths. I turned to run, the whispers transforming into desperate screams. "Stay with us." With every step, the ground felt unsteady, the shadows clawing at my heels as I raced toward the shoreline. The kayak seemed like a beacon of hope, a vessel to carry me away from this place of despair. I reached the water's edge, adrenaline surging as I scrambled into the kayak. The voices faded to a haunting echo, but the feeling of being watched lingered, heavy and palpable. As I paddled away, I cast one last glance at the island, its silhouette shrouded in darkness, the whispers fading into the distance. I knew I had escaped physically, but the island had left an indelible mark on my soul. The voices would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder of the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. As I paddled away from the island, the early morning light cast long shadows on the water, transforming the lake into a glistening expanse of silver. Yet the beauty of the scene did little to ease the turmoil within me. My heart raced as I reflected on the chilling encounter. What had I unleashed by confronting the shadows? Would they follow me back to the world I knew? With every stroke of the paddle, the echoes of the island faded, but they left behind a lingering tension in the air. The voices had been desperate, pleading for something I could barely comprehend. What was it they wanted me to remember? What secrets did the island hold that could lead to such anguish? Each question weighed heavily on my mind as I navigated the shimmering surface, the sun rising steadily behind me. By the time I reached the shore, I felt as though I were emerging from a dream, a surreal haze clinging to me. I staggered onto the sandy beach, knees shaking from the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The cabin loomed ahead, a familiar sight in the disquieting aftermath of my adventure. I forced myself to focus on the mundane tasks of everyday life, but the events of the morning clung to me like a shadow. Inside, I brewed another cup of coffee, hoping the bitter warmth would dispel the chill that had settled in my bones. The cabin felt suffocatingly quiet, every creak of the wood echoing louder than it should. I glanced out the window, half expecting to see something lurking among the trees, but the landscape remained unchanged, calm, serene, and yet so deceptively normal. As I sat at the table, sipping my coffee, I pulled out my notebook, the pages filled with scrawled observations and sketches from my earlier explorations. I needed to make sense of what had happened, to connect the dots between the voices, the shadows, and the ancient symbols I had seen. Flipping to a blank page, I began to jot down my thoughts. Isolated island, I wrote, voices of the past, lost souls. My pen scratched against the paper as I described the altar and the symbols that had pulsated with energy. Something ancient, something desperate. What do they want? I paused, my hand hovering over the page, as a sudden realization hit me. I had dismissed the legends I had read about, stories of a cult that had once thrived in this region, rituals meant to appease dark forces. But what if those voices were not just echoes? What if they were the remnants of those who had been lost to time, trapped in a cycle of despair? My mind raced with possibilities. I needed to return to the university library and dig deeper into the history of the island and the cult that had once roamed these woods. Maybe there were records, old journals, or even artifacts that could shed light on the mystery. The drive to the university was a blur, my thoughts consumed by the need for answers. As I pulled into the campus parking lot, I felt a strange sense of foreboding. The bustling activity of students moving between classes felt alien, like I was stepping into a different world, one that no longer belonged to me. Inside the library, I navigated the aisles with a sense of urgency. Bookshelves towered over me, filled with dusty tomes and forgotten histories. I headed straight for the section on local folklore and history, my fingers tracing the spines of the volumes until I found what I was looking for. Hours passed as I immersed myself in research, combing through texts that spoke of ancient rituals, cults, and the supernatural. I stumbled upon a passage that sent shivers down my spine. The island is said to be a conduit between worlds where the veil is thin and the lost seek to reclaim what was taken from them. As I read on, my heart sank. The rituals described were chillingly similar to what I had felt on the island, the urgency, the desperation of those who had once sought connection with something beyond comprehension. I felt an icy grip of fear as I realized that these rituals were not merely tales of the past, they were a warning. Those who trespass may find themselves entwined in the island's legacy, the text warned. And not all who enter will leave unchanged. I closed the book, dread settling in my stomach. I had already felt the weight of the island's presence. The whispers had reached out to me, and in doing so, they had altered the course of my life. I was now part of a story far larger than myself, a thread woven into the fabric of the island's haunting history. I glanced around the library, the soft murmurs of students discussing their work filling the air. But for me, the noise felt distant, a reminder of the normalcy I was slowly losing. I knew I needed to go back to the island, back to confront whatever it was that awaited me. As I prepared to leave, a sudden chill ran down my spine. The feeling of being watched returned, heavier this time, like eyes lurking just beyond the edges of my vision. I turned quickly, but no one was there. Just rows of books and the faint rustle of pages. The drive back to the cabin felt longer than before, each passing moment filled with an impending sense of dread. The woods closed in around me, shadows shifting just out of sight. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the air thick with unease. When I finally arrived at the cabin, I barely stepped inside before my heart sank at the realization of what lay ahead. The island called to me, its whispers growing stronger, demanding my return. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing with doubt. What if I was in over my head? What if I didn't come back this time? But the urge for answers was overpowering. I could not turn away from the truth. I had to know what was hidden beneath the surface. I had to confront the shadows that haunted me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of orange and purple, I gathered my things once more. I felt an unshakable connection to the island, an undeniable pull that drew me back to its depths. With a heavy heart and a resolute spirit, I made my way to the water's edge, the kayak waiting like a silent sentinel. The voices began their low hum again, a soft chant that sent shivers down my spine. I climbed into the kayak, the water lapping gently against the sides, and pushed off, determination coursing through me. The journey back felt different this time, the water less welcoming, more foreboding. The island loomed ahead, dark and silent, and I could feel the weight of its history pressing down on me. As I paddled closer, I realized that I was not just seeking answers. I was walking into the heart of a mystery that had claimed so many before me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The voices were no longer just whispers. They were a symphony of souls, calling out for release, and I was their unwitting conductor. The night wrapped around me as I paddled toward the island, the world behind me fading into a shroud of darkness. The water rippled gently, almost as if it were alive, reacting to my every stroke. I could feel the pulse of the lake, a heartbeat resonating beneath the surface, and it matched the growing trepidation in my chest. The kayak glided forward, propelled by a mixture of fear and determination. As I neared the shore, the familiar outline of the island emerged from the shadows, its silhouette towering against the starry sky. I felt a strange sense of belonging mingled with dread. The voices had called me back, their echoes now clearer and more insistent, weaving through the air like an intricate tapestry of sound. Each whisper seemed to pull me closer, urging me to step onto the land that felt so simultaneously inviting and foreboding. I secured the kayak to a nearby tree, its gnarled roots clawing at the earth like fingers reaching for something lost. The moment my feet touched the ground, a jolt of energy coursed through me. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel the island's presence wrapping around me, as if it were an entity of its own. With each step I took, the ground felt alive beneath me, breathing in sync with the rising tension in the air. I made my way toward the altar, the center of the island's mysteries. The path was overgrown, wild ferns brushing against my legs, their dampness seeping into my jeans. The familiar chill danced up my spine, but this time it was different, less a warning and more a beckoning. The altar stood ominously before me, its stones cold and unyielding. The carvings that adorned its surface seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, the ancient symbols radiating an otherworldly energy. I crouched down, tracing the lines with my fingertips, feeling the grooves as if they were etched into my very soul. It was as if the past had been waiting for me, hoping I would return to unveil its secrets. Suddenly a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, forming a cacophony of voices, each one distinct yet harmoniously intertwined. I could almost make out words, fragments of pleas and warnings. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the urgency of their messages pulsating in my ears. Help us remember, don't forget. I stumbled back, the weight of their sorrow pressing down on me. I had come seeking answers, but now it felt as though I had stepped into a forgotten realm, a place where the line between the living and the lost blurred. My mind raced, grappling with the implications of what I was experiencing. Who were these voices? What had they endured, and how was I entwined in their fate? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. My thoughts turned to the texts I had read in the library. The island as a conduit, the realization hit me like a thunderclap. Perhaps these voices were not just echoes of the past, but fragments of souls caught in a cycle of torment, seeking closure. I was here to listen, to understand. Gathering my courage, I began to speak aloud, my voice trembling in the stillness. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air, thick with expectation. The whispers momentarily ceased, replaced by a profound silence that enveloped me, as if the very world were holding its breath. Then a single voice broke through the quiet, resonating with a clarity that sent chills down my spine. Find the one who is lost. Only they can free us. I shivered at the sound, the words echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. Who is lost? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. What do you mean? A heavy pause followed, filled only by the sound of my own heartbeat. The one who disappeared, the one who remembers. They hold the key. I felt an overwhelming urge to understand, to uncover the truth hidden within the shadows. Who had vanished? Why was I chosen to be the one to seek them out? The answers felt just out of reach, teasing me like the wisps of fog that rolled across the island. Please, I urged into the void. Show me the way. As if in response, the ground trembled slightly beneath me, and a soft glow emanated from the altar. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, drawn to the light that pulsed with an ethereal energy. The symbols on the stones began to shift, swirling together to form a new pattern, one I hadn't seen before. I could feel a presence emerging from the light, a figure taking shape before me. It was a woman, her features obscured, her expression a mix of sorrow and hope. She reached out a hand, beckoning me closer. My breath caught in my throat. I felt as if I were being pulled into a dream. Come, she whispered, her voice melodic yet tinged with sadness. You must remember. I stepped forward, the light enveloping me, and in that moment everything shifted. The world around me melted away, replaced by vivid memories that were not my own, fragments of a life I had never lived yet felt intimately connected to. I saw glimpses of the island as it once was, vibrant with life and laughter, before the darkness claimed it. The woman stood beside me, her gaze piercing through the haze. You are the link, she said softly. Only you can help us find peace. As the visions intensified, I felt a rush of emotions, joy, fear, sorrow, crashing over me like waves. I understood then that this island was not merely a place of haunting. It was a sanctuary for those who had suffered, a realm where the past echoed endlessly, waiting for someone to listen. But as quickly as it began, the vision faded, and I found myself back at the altar, breathless and shaken. The woman had vanished, leaving behind a lingering sense of urgency. I realized that I was now irrevocably tied to this island and its mysteries. I had to find the lost one, the key to freeing the souls trapped in the echoes. With renewed determination, I looked around the clearing, the moonlight casting long shadows. The night was still heavy with anticipation, but I felt a new sense of purpose igniting within me. I would uncover the truth behind the lost one, and in doing so, perhaps find a way to release the voices that had haunted this island for too long. As I turned to leave the altar, the whispers began again, rising and falling like the tide, guiding me deeper into the woods. I felt a strange kinship with the island, a bond forged in the crucible of shared fears and hopes. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it. The path wound through the trees, each step bringing me closer to the heart of the island's mystery. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, the sounds of the night blending into a symphony of life. Yet beneath it all, the whispers continued, a reminder that my journey was just beginning. The deeper I ventured into the woods, the more the atmosphere shifted. The air was heavy, almost thick enough to cut through with a knife. Each step felt deliberate, as if the island itself were watching, waiting for me to uncover its secrets. The whispers had grown quieter, retreating to the back of my mind like a distant echo, but I could still feel their presence, pulsing just beneath the surface. The path was winding and overgrown, roots sprawling out like the fingers of ancient giants reaching for the sky. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting ghostly shadows that danced at the edges of my vision. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a figure lurking just beyond the reach of the light. I pushed the thought aside, reminding myself that fear was a natural response to the unknown. As I walked, I began to notice markings on the trees, symbols carved into the bark, similar to those on the altar. They told a story of their own, a language lost to time, but their meanings eluded me. I traced a few with my fingertips, feeling a strange energy course through me, as if the very wood was alive with history. Each groove seemed to hum with a melody that resonated in my bones. Suddenly I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an ancient oak tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled. This tree felt different. It radiated power, as if it were a sentinel guarding the island's secrets. The ground around it was littered with remnants of what looked like offerings, worn trinkets, faded photographs, and even a few small candles, long burned down to stubs. I approached cautiously, feeling the gravity of the place settle heavily on my shoulders. It was as if I had stepped into a forgotten shrine. The air felt charged, and I could almost hear the whispers swell around me, merging into a single, urgent voice that urged me to listen. "Help us find her." The words washed over me, compelling me to kneel before the tree. I placed my hands on the earth, grounding myself in the moment. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the heartbeat of the island, allowing the sounds to envelop me. Visions flashed behind my eyelids, snapshots of laughter echoing through the trees, children playing beneath the oak's sprawling branches. But those moments twisted into shadows, dark figures moving through the forest, faces contorted in anguish. I gasped as the images shifted again, revealing a woman standing at the water's edge, her back to me. She was calling out, her voice carrying across the lake, filled with a mixture of hope and despair. "Come back. Don't leave me." The image shattered and I was left gasping for air, the weight of grief pressing down on me. I knew now I was searching for this woman, the one who had been lost. A sense of urgency flooded my veins. But where had she gone? What had happened to her? I opened my eyes and the clearing felt different. The shadows had deepened and I could sense movement just beyond the edge of the light. My heart raced as I stood, scanning the darkness, waiting for something to reveal itself. Was it her, the woman from my vision? Or was it something far more sinister? Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the bushes. I whipped around, adrenaline surging through me. The air crackled with tension. From the underbrush emerged a figure, its features obscured by the shadows. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but curiosity held me in place. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. The figure hesitated, then stepped into the moonlight. My breath caught in my throat. It was a young woman, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. She looked as if she had stepped straight out of my visions, her expression one of both recognition and confusion. "Please, you have to help me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I've been looking for you." "Looking for me," I echoed, the words tasting strange on my tongue. "Who are you?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting something to emerge from the darkness. "I'm the one who disappeared. I can't remember how I got here." Her words sent a jolt of realization through me. This was her, the lost one, the key to everything. But as I studied her, I noticed the flicker of panic in her eyes. Something was not right. "Are you okay?" I asked, inching closer. "What happened to you?" "I don't know," she cried, her voice rising in pitch. I remember being here." And then it all goes dark. There are voices, so many voices, and they won't stop. A chill ran down my spine. I had felt those voices, their presence thrumming through the air, urging me to act. "You're not alone," I reassured her, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've heard them too. We need to figure out what happened." Suddenly the forest erupted with sound, a cacophony of whispers rising to a fever pitch. I could feel the energy shift, as if the very essence of the island was reacting to our presence. The shadows around us deepened and the temperature dropped. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing her hand. We dashed away from the tree, the voices swelling behind us, a chorus of urgency and desperation that echoed through the night. The path twisted before us, a maze of trees and underbrush that seemed determined to keep us from escaping. My heart raced as we stumbled forward, the ground uneven beneath our feet. I could hear something pursuing us, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of the light, an unseen predator waiting for the moment to strike. "Where do we go?" she gasped, glancing over her shoulder, her fear palpable. "Back to the altar," I shouted, my mind racing. "We can find answers there." As we sprinted through the forest, the whispers became a chaotic storm, drowning out all other sounds. The fear that had gripped me earlier morphed into a fierce determination. We had to reach the altar, had to understand the source of the voices before they consumed us. Finally, we burst into the clearing, the altar looming before us like a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. I felt the familiar energy surge through me, stronger than ever, and I knew this was where our answers lay. We skidded to a halt, breathing heavily, the air thick with tension. The whispers intensified, swirling around us like a tempest. "Help us remember," they cried, merging into a single voice that resonated deep within my soul. Together, I said, squeezing the woman's hand. We can break the cycle. We just need to remember. With that, I stepped closer to the altar, urging her to follow. The symbols began to glow, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the frantic beating of my heart. I closed my eyes, allowing the energy to envelop me, drawing the woman in with me. Focus on the memories, I instructed. What do you say? Her eyes widened as she joined me, her thoughts intertwining with mine. I felt the weight of her past flooding my mind, fragments of laughter, shadows of joy, and the chilling embrace of loss. It all swirled together, forming a tapestry of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. But in the midst of the chaos, I caught a glimpse of clarity. The dark figures from my vision, the voices of the lost. They were all connected, part of a greater story that had unfolded on this very island. I pushed through the turmoil, determined to uncover the truth. Remember, I urged, feeling the energy surge around us. We can set them free. As the memories flooded my senses, I could feel the spirits of the island gathering, their presence amplifying the connection we shared. The air crackled with anticipation, and I understood that this was the moment of reckoning. Together, we would confront the shadows of the past and unravel the mystery that had bound this island in sorrow for far too long. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.